Today, we've got an experienced auto dealer who tells his story from being a butcher to becoming a very successful rural dealer. Let's get into it.
With 30 years experience in auto logistics and state-of-the-art locations in 5 major Australian cities, Precar Fleet Services are a premier all-in-one solutions provider for commercial vehicle fleet operators, leasing companies and original equipment manufacturers. Please visit precar.com.au and click on the link to Fleet Services.
So Ric, thanks for joining us today. Great to have you on the show. Maybe just to kick things off, can you tell us the great Ric De Reuter story, where you started and how you got into the industry?
Well, first of all, good evening, John. Good evening, Mark. Thanks for having me on. My story goes back when I was around 38 years of age. I'm now 66. I came into the motor industry by default. I was a single parent with 3 children, and I had to work around those children. So I got a job in Bendigo washing cars. Given my background in the butchering industry, I found it very easy to talk to people whilst I was washing the cars. Circumstances change as they do when you're a single parent, and those circumstances certainly changed for me in a big way. And I was then asked if I would like to sell some cars because my boss had seen me talking to the people. And I said, yeah, I think I wouldn't mind that. I'll give it a bit of a go and see how we go. So that was the start of it. And from there, I went on. Within 12 months, I was from a rural town. I was in Melbourne at Nuttawading Toyota as the closer. And I can remember my first and second day at Nuttawading Toyota. I'll never forget it as the closer. And I went home and I was literally in tears with my partner at the time, who's now my wife. And I said, I don't think I can do this. You know, it's so hard, right? And at Nuttawading Toyota in those days, the office, anyone that worked there will remember, the offices were little glass partitions in between them. So the person in that office heard what you were saying to the person in the office next to you, and you were called in. And pretty quickly I learned that if I'm going to be successful at this business, I have to learn to tell a story and I have to learn to be able to back myself in. And that meant knowing what I was about to say and what I was about to say to the people next door, and then work that off each other. I suppose I can't remember off the top of my head how long I was there in that role, and then I became the used car manager, and then I became the general manager for a short period. From there, I just went on into different dealerships as a trainer. I'd been successful there, and it was a very successful business, that's for sure. It had changed into the hands of the receivers. So I had a very good boss there, and she looked after me very well. And then other people came to me and said, would you come and work for us? And I grew an affinity, I suppose, to used cars. And the reason I grew an affinity to used cars was that I'd been in rural Victoria, I'd been taught about used cars. And a great saying was that no 2 cars were the same. Whereas in new cars, the price was the price. So you had nothing to negotiate with. But in used cars, you had plenty because every car that you sold was different. And from there, I was lucky. I got, if you could call it luck, I had some great bosses who allowed me to do what I wanted to do. And I was successful at it and sold a lot of cars. But I looked at it and I thought, you know, it's not hard, but it's not easy. And I thought, I can do this for myself. So I came back to rural Victoria to do some training in some dealerships, and I came to a town where they wanted to make $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 a unit, and they were selling 10, 15, 20 cars a month on a car yard that had a national brand that should have been selling more. When I came back, I was very lucky. I had a lot of help from the Herzog family, and I told them that I would like to go by myself. So I found a little used car yard, which was a very small, tiny place, and we put 25 cars on there, of which I owned 5, and the Herzog family owned 20. And I went from there, and they supported me through thick and thin. I didn't have to pay for the cars until I sold them. And then it grew, the business grew from there to where it is today. I think the best thing I learnt was working for yourself is very, very hard. I had some help from some outside people, financial help, but the business itself, I grew by myself and by teaching. I never employed anyone inside the car business. I employed all young people and taught them how to sell cars. And the business was successful. It was a used car business. We went into a town where they told us we wouldn't last 6 months, we wouldn't last 6 weeks. We're still there today, 25 years later. We still sell our 80 to 100 used cars a month, although during COVID that was quite different. And we still stick to the same principles as what I learned all the way through. And the motor business has been very kind to me, both financially and very rewarding with the people that I've met through the industry. And then one day out of nowhere, we thought, well, we'll get into new cars. And we got an opportunity through Renault, which people said was a brand that you probably didn't need to have. But we found it was a great brand for us. We were 6 times, I think, Dealer of the Year. We sold so many Renaults that it wasn't funny in a town that had barely seen a Renault. We were the first time and only time rural national Dealer of the Year. And those principles we put into place there were built on the core principles: customer service, looking after your customers, all the 1% things in the motor business. I liked new cars, but I didn't love them. And the used cars was always there in the background. It was used cars that kept the business, that made the money in the business. A few years back, I can't remember off the top of my head, it may be 4 years now, we were offered Jeep and we took on Jeep. And let me tell you, that was a very, very, very hard brand to take on. But we've managed to find some success there, and it's been very good. My life in the motor business, we employ 40 people now. I never, ever, ever thought that coming from a butcher shop to be a dealer principal or owner of a business like that. And I'm very proud of what I've done. A lot of people inherit businesses or they get family businesses. We build our business from nothing. I remember you used to come to my little car yard and there was a fence halfway across the block of land, and behind that fence were 3 sheep. We had a name for each one of the sheep, and that's where we started from. So it's been a hell of a ride, but it's a very, very, very good business if you're successful at it. And success comes from within, as we all know. And if you put your mind to it, it doesn't matter if you have a lot of money or not a lot of money, you can make a go of the car business. I would recommend the car business to anyone.
Thank you for listening. Hopefully you got as much out of the discussion with Ric De Reuter as we did.
Remember to subscribe to our channel on YouTube, Spotify and iTunes, and we'll speak to you again next week.